everybody, so with the release of Creed 3, we have now made it up to 9 entries in this shared universe. 6 Rocky films, 3 Creed films, and for the most part, I enjoy this franchise quite a bit. It's one of my favorite franchises, sports or otherwise, and for the most part also, I don't like saying worst to best because the majority of these entries in this franchise, I actually do enjoy. Of course, this is just my personal ranking, so make sure you share your ranking down below in the comment section because I'm very curious to just see how different everyone's rankings are. But without further ado though, let's get right into my ranking. At number 9, I have Rocky 5. You can definitely see what they were trying to do with Rocky 5, trying to bring Rocky back to his roots after the last 2 films, recapturing the magic, if you will, but its ideas just aren't executed very well. Out of all the various different times we've seen Sylvester Stallone portray Rocky, I think his portrayal in Rocky 5 is my least favorite. This aloof, not so great father, training Tommy Gunn, and culminating in probably the worst confrontation in the entire franchise where the two of them have a back alley brawl instead of fighting in the boxing ring. I don't absolutely hate this entry or anything, but it's definitely the one that sticks out like a sore thumb compared to all the other entries in the franchise. At number 8, I have Rocky 2. Now, it is a very hard task at hand to follow up such a great film like the original Rocky, but even still, I think they did a solid job with Rocky 2 as far as continuing on the story and the overall tone of the original film. While I mostly enjoyed the continued story, getting to see Adrian and Rocky's relationship grow as we set up this rematch between Apollo and Rocky, the story does drag a bit, and that's one of the things why I'm not as big a fan of Rocky 2 as some of the other entries. It's a very slow-moving movie. It definitely takes a while to get going, but once we get to the training montages and the fight itself between Apollo and Rocky, I do have a great time with it. It's just the middle portion of the film is just pacing-wise too slow for me to rewatch over and over again. At number 7, I have Rocky 3. This kind of did begin a more cheesy era to the Rocky franchise, and to be honest, that's kind of what I loved about this film, the cheesiness factor. Whether it's Rocky battling Hulk Hogan Thunder Lips or Mr. T as Clubber Lang, it's just so much fun and filled with so many iconic sequences like establishing Rocky and Apollo as friends, the way they're training together, Eye of the Tiger. We even get to see a new, different type of Rocky here. He's a bit more confident, a bit more cocky, which kind of coincides perfectly with Stallone pretty much getting closer to that peak era in the 80s where he was a megastar. Regardless if we know the Rocky formula by now, it's still a great time. I love the final battle between Clubber Lang and Rocky. And of the Rocky films, this is one I quote quite a bit, mostly the Mr. T lines, like "I pity the fool," or his prediction for the fights. Pain. At number 6, I have Creed 2. Much in a similar vein to Rocky 2, it is a tough task to follow up a great film like Creed, and I think Creed 2 does a solid job continuing on Adonis' story with Rocky, even connecting the two even more, having Ivan Drago and his son Victor be the central antagonist, adding some more interesting new layers to all of their arcs. Each of them gets some really great development for their arcs that continue on from Rocky 4. Even outside of just the rivalry aspect, the story built up around Adonis is very compelling. The feelings are at an all-time high as the film deals with legacy, which on top of the brutal pulse-pounding action which we know and love from this franchise, it really has you invested even more just because the story itself is so good. Stephen Caple Jr. did a great job filling in for Ryan Coogler as director here, and I think he did a phenomenal job. I think it's going to be very exciting that his next project after this is Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Usually I'm not that excited for Transformers films, but that one is one that I very much am looking forward to because of his direction that we saw in Creed 2. At number 5, I have Creed 3, the most recent entry. What a great way to cap off this Creed trilogy. The chapter of Adonis' journey in this is such an emotional roller coaster of redemption and forgiveness and packs on so much emotion. This entry is bolstered even further by having Jonathan Majors as the central antagonist, Damien. He is phenomenal, the best foe that Adonis has ever faced in all 3 films, and he pushes Adonis to his limits physically in their epic boxing confrontation, but also emotionally with this friends turned enemies angle. Also, as someone who's a huge lover of anime, all of the sequences in this film that are very anime influenced are pretty amazing. They're pretty epic is one way to put it. You definitely feel like you're watching a big live action Creed anime at times, which I think is pretty cool. It may not work for everyone, but for me, it worked a whole lot. Also, a huge credit has to be given to Michael B. Jordan, who directed this installment. Sure, it does suck that Sylvester Stallone is not in this. His presence is sorely missed in Creed 3, but I do think overall this is a pretty great entry and an awesome send-off cap-off for this trilogy. We know we're getting a Creed 4, but as a trilogy, it's a great cap-off. At number 4, I have Rocky 4. When I think of all of the great cinema from the 1980s, the peak cinema, I think of films like Rocky 4 and the cheesiness overload, the montages after montages, the 80s classic soundtrack, Butler robots, the revenge angle with Rocky. All of those various different aspects working together in Rocky 4 is why I think this is one of the most entertaining entries in the franchise. Of course, Rocky 4 still has plenty of drama in its story, the death of Apollo Creed in the ring, but it isn't attempting to be overly serious either, with its over-the-top villain in Ivan Drago, who's one of the most coolest, intimidating villains around. But the build-up to Rocky and Ivan Drago's inevitable fight in the final act in the Soviet Union is pretty epic. For me, at least, I think it's one of the most satisfying endings to any of the various different Rocky films, and that's why I enjoy this entry a lot. At number 3, I have Rocky Balboa. Even despite the very long gap in between installments, 16 years went by between Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa, I think that Rocky Balboa is a great return to form for the Rocky franchise. I really love this new look at Rocky later on in his life and gaining this new introspective look into his world, seeing him attempt to overcome the odds stacked against him one final time, stepping into that ring at 60 years old, which to me is crazy that he could actually do that. But Sylvester Stallone looks pretty great in the film. This entry just has so much heart and honestly I think is one of the most inspirational entries and gives off similar vibes to that very first film with Stallone's excellent monologues. Plus the boxing match itself, once we get to that in the final act, it's pretty cool. It's framed in a way that it makes it look like a real pay-per-view match, which is kind of how they filmed it in real life at an actual boxing event. This entry has all the ingredients that makes a perfect Rocky film in my opinion, and it's one of those films that I can watch and be very inspired by. Plus, I just hope I look half as good as Sylvester Stallone does once I hit 60 years old. At number 2, I have Creed. Even to this day, I am still amazed at how great this entry turned out, because I, like many, was a bit skeptical that they were going to do a spin-off film to the Rocky franchise, but somehow Ryan Coogler managed to pull it off with this fresh, different take that continues the franchise's legacy while also forging an interesting new path forward with Adonis. I really love the dynamic between Sylvester Stallone and Michael B. Jordan, since Adonis is a very different type of character, and Sylvester Stallone's doing a really interesting job mentoring him in a much better way than he did when he mentored Tommy Gunn all of those years ago. Plus, Creed just has all the ingredients that you love in a Rocky film: solid dramatic tension, awesome boxing sequences and montages that get you hyped, while also pulling at your heartstrings when it packs on the emotion, particularly when we follow Rocky's character and his struggles with cancer. Honestly, if I'm going back in time, I think Sylvester Stallone deserved to win that Oscar. I mean, at least he got a Golden Globe win out of it, but that performance is probably one of the best performances he's ever given in his entire life. And at number 1, I have Rocky. I mean, it's not a very big surprise. The first film is number 1. It's one of the best sports films of all time. And I do adore what this film accomplished back then. It's a beautiful, uplifting, powerful story with themes of perseverance no matter what. Even if you're this normal guy trying to take on the great Apollo Creed, it's the quintessential underdog story. And you can't help but find Rocky Balboa to be such an endearing character watching this film unfold. You do grow to love him just due to his spirits and his tenacity, no matter the outcome. Sure, he may have not technically won at the very end of Rocky, but just the fact that he got that far is impressive in its own right, and that's why I think this film just is so relatable to so many people, the perseverance aspect. And there you have it. That's my ranking of all the films in the Rocky franchise, all the Rocky films, all the Creed films. It's such a great time talking about this franchise, and like I said, make sure you share your rankings down below in the comments section, because I am very intrigued how you'd rank the franchise, because I feel like there's going to be a wide variety of different lists, just because I think overall most of the installments are well received. I mean, sure, we're not looking at Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that, but I feel like fan reception to the majority of the franchise is pretty strong. So share your rankings down below, and thank you guys for always checking out the videos. I always do appreciate it. Make sure to like on the video and also subscribe to the channel so I always update reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. Next time, see you guys later.